Welcome to Intralogistics Insiders, brought to you by Synaos. Explore the latest trends, challenges, and innovations in intralogistics with industry experts. Welcome to the Intralogistics Insiders podcast. We have today Philipp, Head of Partners and Business Development Manager at Synaos. So welcome to the show.
Hi.
So can you tell us a little bit, how did you start into this world of intralogistics?
Okay, yeah. So from university, I'm a mechanical engineer, so I studied mechanical engineering, but always focusing on processes, on procedures to organize a production or logistics area. I also did a PhD there. And then after looking at some different companies, also doing some consulting, I joined Synaos nearly 5 years ago. And it's a very interesting environment here, looking at software and looking at automation, looking at mobile robots. And I really like this. And looking forward also to talk about this today.
5 years ago, that was almost during the COVID time?
Yeah,
right?
Before the COVID time already.
Before the COVID time. So how was Synaos at that time?
Yeah, of course, the company was much smaller. So all the people working for Synaos were in the office every day. So that, of course, was a very special feeling. I always also like to look back at, for example, our weekly meeting we had back then when the whole company was sitting in one room and everybody was telling what he or she did in the last week, what he or she will do in the next week. And of course, it was very familiar. And of course, I also liked this transparency that you know what the other people are doing, you know what is important for the company, what is happening, what are important meetings that are going on with customers, but on the other hand, also where the developers are working on. So that, of course, back then, I think we were 25 or 30 people, was a very familiar atmosphere. And of course, it was also very nice to, for example, then in the evening, have a beer at the office after work and order some pizza or going to a bar after work. So, of course, that was a very, very smaller Synaos family than we have it today.
COVID has probably changed a lot of things inside of how the company works, but also in terms of how companies operate their intralogistics, isn't it? So there was probably a boom in a lot of e-commerce and manufacturing different sectors. How that has changed after COVID?
Yeah, of course. I think COVID was a challenge for, of course, everybody, and of course also for producing companies and logistics companies. And I think there was also a push for automation because people also looked how they can handle this one. And as you said, of course, there was a boom in e-commerce and this shift towards e-commerce that was, of course, going on in general was accelerated, and e-commerce is getting more and more important. And of course, connected to this, also efficient logistics and efficient intralogistics is getting more and more important, because you as a customer, you are expecting that if you are ordering something online, it will be delivered the next day or maybe 2 days after you ordered it. But if it will be delivered like 1 week later, you are kind of not happy with this anymore. So there are very high customer expectations, looking especially at this field of e-commerce, but those high customer expectations, especially on delivery time and delivery reliability, are also kind of moving in the professional sector. And of course, that's very important that if you have an intralogistics, that you are meeting those logistics targets like delivery time and delivery reliability on a high standard.
So many companies are adopting automation, but traditionally it was manual labor that mostly managed intralogistics. How is this transition going? Do you think that is something is going to stay, that more and more companies are going to automate, or after all the COVID turmoil, now it's going to settle down? How is it going into the future?
Yeah, if you're looking at this aspect of automation and the journey of automation, I think one thing we have to notice is there are big differences in the different industries. For example, if we're looking at automotive industry and the big automotive companies, there you have a lot of automation today because you often have very standardized processes in production, but also in logistics. And for example, you see a lot of mobile robots there driving around, big fleets of mobile robots. And if you're looking at other industries, it's less automation there. For example, there people are just starting to do experiences with automation. In general, from my point of view, there are different steps. So of course, if you are starting with a manual intralogistics, first of all, it's very interesting to get insights about this one and to get data out of this one, because in many times it's kind of a black box. So you have a lot of forklifts driving around, but in the end, maybe you have some information about scanning processes or out of scanning processes, but you of course don't have a real-time position of the forklifts. Often you don't have much information about the utilization of the fleet and something like this. So I think the first step is kind of getting information about those processes and getting data out of those for these processes. And there, for example, we are offering our real-time localization solution, so that in the first step you can collect data about your manual intralogistics vehicles and can then of course use this data to optimize it. The second step then, in my point of view, is of course not only collecting data and analyzing it after some time, but using this data in real time. For example, for planning and controlling your intralogistics fleet, that you have a system taking care of the data and taking care of the orders that have to be fulfilled, and then matching it in a very good way, so that you get a higher efficiency than when you don't do it. So then you have kind of the optimized manual intralogistics, and then of course it's the question of automation. And there, from my point of view, many companies are starting, for example, with one isolated process and start introducing, for example, the first AGVs or RMRs for this process, making some experience, making, for example, also experience in another plant. And then after done this experience, they want to expand automation, adding more and more mobile robots, but for example, also adding the process before that or the process after that. And then a new step comes in, because maybe for this new process, you need another mobile robot, you need another vendor maybe providing this mobile robot. So there's a chance that you need a heterogeneous fleet of mobile robots. So not only mobile robots from one vendor, but mobile robots from different vendors. And then you also have to ask the question, how can I control those different mobile robots? How can I make sure that there's a good traffic management for those different mobile robots from different vendors? And that's exactly what our software or those central fleet management systems are taking care of, that you can connect different mobile robots and you can kind of go on with your automation journey, not being limited to one mobile robot type or one mobile robot vendor, but being able to connect different mobile robots from different vendors to one system. And then, of course, it's the question, there are not only mobile robots, right? Because even in big installations, for example, in automotive industry, we see you have 100 mobile robots or even more, but you still have a lot of manual vehicles. So that's then, of course, also a big question going on or being in parallel with automation. You don't have a pure automated factory in most cases. You also have manual vehicles. And that's also, of course, then a challenge for the system or for the traffic management, because in the best case, you have information about all those vehicles and you are able to integrate all those vehicles, because only then you can do a real optimization and you can really get the best solution and the best result in the end.
What industries do you see that can be more benefit from fleet management software?
So I think, of course, you're benefiting most when you have not only one mobile robot, but you have more mobile robots. So the fleet size, of course, is an important factor. The other aspect you have is, of course, the heterogeneity of the fleet. So if you are having one vendor or you're having different vendors of mobile robots. And then I think another important factor, and that's not in the focus so often, is also the number of sites. Because if you're looking at those two aspects of fleet size and heterogeneity, you should not look at one site. You should look at the different sites you have in your company, for example, across Europe, across the United States or America, or across the whole globe. Because there are different status of automation. Often there are different vendors or equipment providers which are relevant. And I think that's a really important factor to not only look at the isolated sites, but have a strategy to scale automation globally. So if you want to bring automation to the different factories and you don't want to like do one factory a year, you need, of course, a scalable solution with the right hardware, with the right software, and then to bring it out with a good pace.
Okay. Large companies with many sites probably are the ones that moved faster into the automation. They had more resources. But for sure, there is a huge amount of mid-sized companies that also will need to move into automation. Is fleet management software not for them? How they can also get into this automating, integrating different robots? Also, what is the role? Most medium-sized companies work with integrators as well. So they're the ones who are bringing the different robots to integration. They don't have the experience. So is there an opportunity for them to automate and to use fleet management softwares, and how they can do it?
Yeah, of course, it's also a very relevant topic for small and mid-sized company to ask the question how to automate, and of course then what's the right solution to do it. And in my point of view, it's also for them very important to be future-proof, because maybe they are starting today with a small installation of mobile robots, but also, of course, they have manual vehicles, so it's important to find a solution that is integrating both, and that makes sense to integrate both. But then maybe technology is developing, and today much more is possible with automation than it has been like 10 years ago. So also this aspect is, from my point of view, very important, that your solution is really future-proof, because, for example, in 5 years, picking processes that today are manual will also be possible to be done with a mobile robot with a cobot arm on it. And also this, of course, then can be integrated into an intelligent fleet management software. So also for small and medium-sized companies, but also for big companies, I think this aspect of being ready for the future and having a solution that is future-proof can be very important. And you also ask about how to start. And there are different possibilities how to start. So I think a very important aspect is, of course, first of all, looking at the manual processes that are going on at the moment. For example, collecting data. For example, also kind of doing some quick wins, or doing some improvements for quick wins there. And then, of course, the question is, what is the right process to start with for automation? And there it can help to do a simulation before you start with this project. Of course, it makes also sense to do some POC or a small pilot, so that also the people in the factory or in the logistics center are getting used to mobile robots. And what does it mean if I'm implementing it? What does it mean if I'm running that? What does it mean when I'm supporting it? So I think it's also very important that on this journey of automation, you always take the people with you. So that's a very important factor, I think, also when you're introducing automation and mobile robots.
This podcast is brought to you by Synaos, the all-in-one intralogistics platform, orchestrating trail flows with mobile robots, forklifts, and people to overcome cost pressures and skilled worker shortages. Visit synaos.com to learn more.
Automation is not only about mobile robots or AGVs or AMRs. During your trajectory, I saw that you work, for example, at Trump. They used to make laser cutting machines, punching machines, bending machines. And for a long time, they were focused on making, the best bending machine, the best laser cutter, the fastest, so people can get more ROI from the machines, to get more output on their manufacturing. Something that they have been realizing is that it doesn't matter how fast your laser cutter is, if then the parts that have been produced lay there for half an hour because there is an operator that is not going to go there until the next half an hour. How important is going to be process automation and integrating not only MRs, but the machines themselves when they're going to finish the job, and integrating with other parts of the process?
Yeah, that's a very important factor from my point of view, because in the end, you not only have to look at the production processes, and then the intralogistics is following those production processes as it has been in the past. I think it's also important to have like an integrated view on it. And you can, as you said, optimize like the production process and get the most out of it. But if you have a bad intralogistics performance, it's not good, and you don't have a good result. You don't have a high efficiency in the end. So I think a very good example to also understand it and illustrate this one is if you are looking at a flight. So if, for example, if now I want to go to Spain, or I want to go to Madrid and fly there from Hanover, I have a flight time from, I don't know, I think about 2 hours. So, of course, that's a short flight time. But if I then, and as we have all experienced, for example, have to get to the airport 3 hours before to go through security because there's a long queue and a lot is going on. And in the end, in Madrid, I have to kind of wait for my luggage for like an hour because there are not enough rakers. Then, of course, the whole time for the journey is getting bigger and bigger. The flight maybe then is short and you have a very fast plane, but also this starting and end process have to be efficient. And a little bit the same. It's like if you're looking at production and intralogistics processes, if you have a very optimized production process, that's of course good, but you should also look at the process before and after this, bringing the material and then of course bringing away the produced good and looking at those storage parts. And that's exactly this connection also between intralogistics and production processes.
So you have brought an interesting example, but also an interesting topic, which is airport logistics.
Yeah.
Right now, for example, there is a lot of manual work, for example, in just moving luggage around, even though inside the airport, all the luggage tends to be semi-automated. So they have these conveyors and they move things around. But after it gets to the conveyor, then it's someone that is driving a truck and all the traffic. There are some initiatives that are looking at automating that. You are partners management and business development manager. So where do you see the future of this? What's coming?
Yeah, there are many interesting opportunities also outside the classical factory or logistics center. So you mentioned airports. I think another interesting aspect, as well as harbors, or also we have those train-related stuff where also AGVs or automated vehicles are driving. And you can see many of those use cases have one thing in common. A lot of things are going outside there. So at the moment, a lot of automated vehicles in logistics and production processes are, of course, driving inside the factory, inside the warehouse, inside the distribution center. But of course, there are also solutions for outside transport. Of course, then you have to take into account different other technical aspects, like, of course, you have maybe bad weather, and of course, you don't have a good Wi-Fi connection on a big outdoor area. So those are a little bit some challenges, but technology developed a lot, and you can see vendors offering solutions for outdoor mobile robots. So I think this aspect of airports and harbors and the others example can also be a very interesting field for the future and for automation. And we all are, of course, also looking at automated driving on streets, so in public transport or in public, how it's called?
Public roads, or?
Oh, yeah, right, in the public world. And, those are, of course, very challenging situations for automation that, for example, a person can walk there or people are acting what you have not expected. But I think because also a lot of development is going on there, and this can also be transferred to industrial applications again. And I think there are many interesting fields to come, like airports and other stuff like this.
Something that it's a question. Probably factories are way more automated and more advanced than what we see on the streets and the roads. There are no FSD cars running, at least on European roads. But in factories, we have fully autonomous robots running around. How is people adapting to that? Is people trusting the robots and the fleet managers? And do you think we will also trust them on the streets?
Yeah. So, of course, there are some differences between like a factory and a public street. And I think it's also a question of warranty, or there are many questions about warranties if you're looking at this public applications. But looking at the factory, I think the very important aspect is the safety of the technology. And that's really, of course, a basic and very, very important factor when you're introducing automation. And of course, people are also making the experience, if I'm kind of walking in front of a mobile robot in a factory, it will detect me and it will stop. And I think that's, of course, a very important kind of experience and building up trust. But of course, when you are introducing automation, it's very important to take the people with you. And I know sometimes, of course, it's also hard for the people, for example, if you're looking at the fleet management side, to get the information why the system is acting like this. And I think that's also an important factor, that you are kind of giving the people on the shop floor the chance to understand why systems are acting like this and which data are they taking account, what are their decisions. For example, why is the one mobile robot stopping? Maybe because another one is coming and the system decided the other one should go first. And I think that's also important to train the people and to build up knowledge and understanding for the system behavior, so that they are also more and more trusting the system and also can predict the system behavior.
Going back into trends.
Yes.
AI has flooded like our daily lives, from ChatGPT to image generation to videos like with OpenAI's Sora. Are we seeing also the impact of AI in the industrial world?
Yeah, I think there are more and more applications, and it's a huge topic at the moment. But we also have to do the reality check. And if we are looking at some factories and some logistics centers, they are kind of far away from your AI, because also basic stuff, first of all, has to be introduced. A lot of planning in the production world is still done with Excel. So that's, of course, also a factor. And I think the first thing that is very important is that you are collecting data, and that you are not only connecting it, but that you are also using it. So, for example, having a system, or first of all, having a data infrastructure, then having a system using the data, and also using the data in real time for making decisions. For example, which mobile robot should take which order. And we are doing it like this, that we are always comparing the whole order pool we know from the system, so transport orders that have to be fulfilled, with the whole pool of mobile robots, and then calculating the best solution to apply those orders to the different mobile robots. And that's, I think, a good example. So you should not plan like once an hour or once a shift. You always get better information from the shop floor, because a plan is a plan, and you will never fulfill the plan like this, because something will happen in the reality during the time you're making this plan. And I think that's the important factor. First of all, of course, you have to take into account the data, then make something with the data, so make use of the data. And then, of course, the better the algorithm, and maybe if you are taking AI in it, of course, the better the result will be. But of course, those basic tasks have to be done first, because you are kind of introducing the latest AI algorithms and the latest stuff. In the end, for our customers, I think the most important factor is that you have a stable operations and that you are fulfilling your goals there. And then, of course, the AI is kind of maybe the last step to get there and to get the best result out of it.
You launched an interesting topic, which is to be stable. Coming here on the calculating trajectories, planning orders, AGVs or AMRs. What is the preferred choice? Because with AGVs, you have a defined path you can follow, and you decide which one goes first on those routes. Or AMRs, obstacle avoidance. Does it make sense in a factory to have obstacle avoidance, for example?
Yeah, that's a big discussion going on there, right? Having the AGVs, the more classical vehicles, following a virtual, or the old ones even following a real line. And as you said, the AMRs only having a start and an end point, and then finding their own way, being able to drive around obstacles. That's a big discussion going on there in the market. And the answer from my side, it depends. You always have to look at the process and the things that are happening around it. So both systems or both technological approaches have advantages. If you're looking at AGVs, they have the pre-planned route. So of course you also can calculate throughput very good, and you know how the system will behave, and you have a very stable and reliable system. If you're looking at AMRs, of course, you have the big advantage. They can drive around obstacle, and if you have a very dynamic environment, or have even, for example, an office environment where people are walking around, or a laboratory environment, then that can be a very important factor. But of course, some unwanted traffic situations can arise. So, for example, the AMR is then going on the other side of the road, and a manual vehicle is coming from there. So you have to look at the processes. Are there manual vehicles? What is the layout looking like? And that's the very important factor from our point of view. So both are very good systems, and of course, it's very good to also combine the strengths of both approaches. But in the end, you have to look at the processes and the layout and what can be done there and can be fulfilled there.
I've heard very strong opinions against AMRs in factory automation.
Yeah.
Because if the robots recalculate the route because there was an obstacle, the question is why there was an obstacle.
Exactly. So that's an important factor. Of course, you want to have a clean area. You don't want that people put a box somewhere on the road. And especially in those factories and in those brownfield installations, a lot of traffic is going over those streets. So you have manual vehicles, you have automated vehicles, you have, for example, people on bicycles, you have like people walking around, and so a lot of traffic is going on a small area, and then you don't want a box standing directly on the street. So that's exactly one very important factor. And often, especially when you have such a dense traffic, it does not make sense that people are overtaking. So also in many factories, there are rules that even manual vehicles are not allowed to overtake other vehicles. So then also a robot should not do it. But for example, if you are looking at a laboratory environment, or also at this field of service robotics, we also see this more and more. Robots are, for example, used also in restaurants to bring food to the people. Then this can be a very important and needed kind of thing that the robot is driving around freely and is calculating the way. But of course, in factory, there are many restrictions, and especially also when you have a big fleet of, for example, 100 or 200 or even more mobile robots, then it's maybe better if they are following a pre-planned route.
I was this summer in Austria. Mm-hmm. I was at a restaurant with a service robot that was serving meals. And I got into a conclusion. At the end, you want the service robot because at the end you need more hands to serve the food. But when there is enough people for you to need the robot is not working people when the place is crowded. So the robot is only working well when the place is empty. That's when you don't need the robot. So is there maybe some people using robots because of marketing or image and not really for getting more operational efficiency?
Yeah, I think that's also a factor, especially in the beginning when you are making first you're getting to know automation, you're getting to know robotics. Maybe then also people are choosing applications that are not the best ones for automation. And that's, I think, also a very important step on this learning path or on this automation journey, that people are making experience and are also finding the right application for mobile robots in their companies. Of course, there are consultants, or also we are consulting our leads and our customers there. What is the right application, for example, in a process workshop? So that can give a lot of guidance and a lot of help, because this whole topic of automation, where to use mobile robots, and then in the second step also, which mobile robot should I use? It's a huge topic, it's a huge market, and especially when you are there in the beginning and are new to this field, it can be also very challenging. So this aspect of getting guidance from some experts can be very, very beneficial.
It looks like there are AGVs and AMRs. Everyone is building one.
Yes.
Why do we need so many AMRs and AGVs?
Yeah, so the market is really exploding. If you're looking at the statistics, there's a market growth from up to 30% per year in the statistics. And I think that's, of course, interesting development. And as you said, many people or many companies even if they have not done it in the past, are also now starting to produce mobile robots, to offer mobile robots. Other companies are more and more raising the production volume. And I think the most important factor is robots, of course, can do more and more compared to the past, and they are getting cheaper and cheaper compared to the past. So that's, of course, a very important factor. On the other hand, if you're looking at the workforce side, you have less people who want to work in the factory, who want to do this logistics tasks, especially if it's like bringing material from A to B the whole day, always the same route. So there are also less people who want to work there. And if you're having this combination and, for example, looking at the 3-shift operation and the robots are getting cheaper, of course, the return on investment gets there easier. So that is why there's this huge push in automation, especially in logistics and in intralogistics, and more companies are offering mobile robots. But I think there will be a huge consolidation in the next years looking at the market. And also at some fields, you're also already seeing it that, for example, big companies are buying smaller companies. But I think that will go on. And I think in 10 years, the market will look very, very different.
In automotive, there was a big consolidation. But now we are seeing like more competitors, especially coming from Asia. Is that happening right now in AGVs and AMRs?
Yeah, we also have this development looking at the AGV and AMR market. So we have many traditional vendors and very specialized vendors also. So, for example, they are not having a solid portfolio of like standing products, but they are kind of engineering new mobile robots, looking at the application and looking at the processes. And often also many vendors have a very small production volume of mobile robots. So for example, 100 mobile robots per year. And on the other hand, we have, especially in Asia, many companies having standardized products and are producing a lot of mobile robots per year. And of course, are then also are able to offer them for less money or for a very good and very cheap price. So that is why also this development that you've described is also like kind of present in the mobile robotics market. And we also have many companies from Asia being present at fairs and also, of course, selling mobile robots to Europe. And it will be interesting to see how this will develop in the next years.
How are we going to have all these types of mobile robots and be able to run them in a factory?
Yeah, that's a very good factor and a very interesting topic. So, as I said, if you are starting with automation and you have only, for example, 1 or 2 robots from one vendor, of course, that's not such a big topic. But if you're advancing with automation, if you're having more sites and if you're looking at those huge amount of different vendors, it's important to think about this question: how to integrate different mobile robots from different vendors in one application, or not only maybe in one application at one factory, but across my different factories, across my different locations. And there, standardization is a very important factor. And there are many initiatives or different initiatives in the different regions. And in Germany, we have one very important and very advanced initiative, and it's called VDA 5050. So that's a communication standard or a standardized interface for the communication between mobile robots or the software on the mobile robot and a master control system like it is Synaos. And in this standard, it's regulated how the information should be exchanged, or in this standard, it is regulated what information should be exchanged and how the information should be exchanged. And that, of course, can be very useful exactly to solve this problem, to connect different mobile robots to one fleet system and one master control system. And for example, we have demonstrated also the capabilities of this VDA 5050 standard at different fairs now. For example, at the AGV mashup, having up to 10 mobile robots from different vendors running on one area, setup time of 2 days, controlled from the cloud. And then, of course, the people can see different technologies combined, different mobile robot vendors are working together and maybe also transporting the same load in those showcases. And I think that's really showing how interoperability can work, and that is working. And one other important factor there, it's not only like a showcase thing, it's really in production. We have many productive installations with VDA 5050 now, and not only in Germany, not only in Europe, also, for example, in the United States, in other regions. So it's also not only German standard anymore, it's really more and more getting a global standard, solving this issue of interoperability.
You yourself are in charge of partners management. So I understand that you also work to close partnerships with companies that want to integrate and get into VDA 5050. What do you think are the main challenges that the companies find to adopt VDA 5050?
Yeah. So the standard developed. So I think that's also an important factor. And from my point of view, that's also a very good factor. So it's not a standard that has one time been defined. We're also getting the feedback from the integration processes, from the running projects. And there's a big group of mobile robot vendors and software companies working on the standard and further developing it. And maybe one challenge we had in the past was that at some points the standard was not clear enough, so it left a little bit room for interpretation. But this feedback now is getting back to the work group, and there's not only one version of the standard, there are at the moment 3 versions that are published, and also those definitions got better and better. So it's this integration process also now is kind of getting smoother and smoother. Of course, for some companies, it can be a little bit challenging because maybe VDA 5050, it's based on MQTT, and maybe that's a different technology from what they have used in the past. And we also talked about this topic of AGVs and AMRs. So the first versions of VDA 5050 focused on AGVs to have a starting point. And, if you want to do a standard for mobile robotics, you have to start somewhere and you have to focus on some aspects. And of course, that can be a challenge maybe for classical AMR companies to then adopt to this one and to get into this logic. But also there are developments in the standard that with future versions also more and more AMR functionalities will be included in the newer versions. But I think that's some challenges that can happen during the process. And what we as Synaos are offering there, we have a very structured and very well-defined onboarding process where we have defined criteria, which we are then testing together with our partners during the VDA 5050 implementation and during this Synaos certification, so that in the end, both of us, so the mobile robot vendor and we, are sure if we are going to a customer, VDA 5050 communication works, and we can really focus on the project implementation and don't have to talk about VDA 5050 when we are at the customer. We have kind of made the foundation earlier and then are going to the customer after finishing this onboarding process.
True interoperability, talking about how we can get true interoperability. I'm quite new to VDA 5050, so I will be clear, but if you have different robots making different maps, for example, and having different path planning, if they are AMRs, for example, are they sharing this information or each one has their own map?
Yeah, that's a very interesting topic. And in our approach, each mobile robot has an own navigation graph. So, and not only each mobile robot, but each mobile robot type. So, for example, if you have a tugger from one vendor, and if you have an underride vehicle from this vendor, and maybe then you have a forklift from another vendor. So each mobile robot type has kind of a navigation graph because, the driving behavior and the technology can be very different if you're looking at those vehicles. So in general, this topic of maps is very interesting because, as I said, technology of mobile robots is very different. So some are having a static map on the mobile robot and are kind of following the static map. Some are more free and you can do a lot of changes kind of on the fly. So that's a huge technology span. And I think it's a big strength of VDA 5050 that it's not only integrating the one or the other technology, but it's really technology open. And that's also what we have shown at the Mashup, but what we have shown in productive installations. You can have all this different technology. So like of different form factors of a mobile robot, different navigation technology, different lifting technology, for example, all controlled with VDA 50/50 in one application. And then, of course, you sometimes need like different maps or different configuration, but it's possible to bring everything together.
What kind of partners is Synaos looking for? It's only AMR and AGV manufacturers, or do you also consider as well, for example, machine builders?
Yeah, so we have a very broad partner network, and exactly one very important group is the group of the mobile robot partners. So looking at getting the technical compatibility first, so going together through this VDA 50/50 onboarding process, but of course also looking at roles and responsibilities in projects, and of course also doing business together, doing marketing together, and so that we have a very good joint offering for our customers. But we are also working together with many other companies. So, for example, companies from the technology sector, companies from the service sectors, and also, for example, integrators, bringing the projects and bringing the solution to our customers. That's also very important partner groups. And then, of course, we are working closely with associations or also some universities. And yeah, that's kind of our big partner network. We are working on finding the right partners to offer not only a software solution, but to offer a kind of complete solution to our customer.
What is the secret sauce of Synaos? Because it's a young company, and now you have partners like Continental, KUKA, the big players in the industry. How do you do it?
Yeah, so I think that's a good mixture, right? So we are at Synaos, we are a software company, and we are also focusing on developing software and offering back-end software also to our customers. And it's our approach not to kind of go down to the mobile robot and start to build own robotic software or building own hardware, because there are many companies out there who are experts for doing this, and it's exactly our approach to partner with those big companies you mentioned, but also with smaller ones and also with some startups from this hardware field, in the end to find the best solution then there for the customer. And what's the reason for a good partnership, or what's the background of a good partnership? Of course, that there a benefit for both sides, right? And that's exactly what we are working on with our partners, and to identify the right partners so that both partners are profiting from this cooperation, and not only the partners, but also the customer.
There are other standards in Asia or in the US, like mass robotics. So how does VDA 50/50 compare to those?
Mm-hmm. If you are looking at the different standards for interoperability of mobile robotics, it's very important, first of all, of course, to look at the scope of the standards. So is it about traffic management? Is it also about distribution of missions and the fulfillment of missions? And there are differences in the different standards. And I think for the user, another very important factor is the adoption of the standard. So it's important to not only have a standard as a theoretical construct, but also to have it used in industry, and to have applications where it is used, and of course to have a lot of mobile robotics companies that are dealing with the standard and that are offering mobile robotics supporting the standard. And from my point of view, looking at both factors, like the scope and also the adoption, VDA 50/50 is the most advanced of the different standards. You have a lot of use cases in industry, in production, where VDA 50/50 is used, and you have a lot of different mobile robot companies offering mobile robots supporting the VDA 50/50 standard, and that is why, from my point of view, at the moment, it's the most advanced one.
Okay. In factory automation, for example, it has happened that, for example, Bosch Rexroth in the US, they pushed for Ethernet IP and they dominated the market. Here in Europe, we had Siemens with their Profinet. And then some other groups started pushing EtherCAT, for example, with Beckhoff. And it has dominated maybe in the high performance applications in Asia and Europe, also some in the US. But there's like a regional leader. Do you think this will happen with also these standards for mobile robots?
Yeah, so at the moment, I think a lot of development is going on there. And looking at VDA 50/50, of course, it started in Germany, and it started in German automotive industry. But from my point of view, at the moment, it's not a German standard anymore. And it has never been a German standard, to be honest, because also in this working group, there are companies from Austria, there are companies from Switzerland, there are companies from Belgium. So it's more like a European working group, and it's also more like a European standard. And if you're looking at the different geographies, there are projects with VDA 5050 not only in Germany, not only in Europe, but also in other states and on other continents. And also it's not limited to automotive industry anymore. So of course it started there, but also other industries are using it. And I think also in other regions it's more advanced than other standards. And I think at the moment there's a big chance that kind of VDA 5050 is getting the global standard. For us, it's also no problem or no big thing kind of to integrate another standard into our application. You know, it's also an interesting question or an interesting perspective to maybe have 2 or 3 standards on the world, you know, but that's of course a lot better than having 1,000 individual interfaces to 1,000 mobile robotics software stacks. So I think having one standard is very good, but also having 2 standards or 3 standards could also be, of course, in perspective.
Okay. So to finish up, what do you think is the future of intralogistics, of this interconnected ecosystem? What are the next big thing or the key things that we will see in the future?
So, of course, the number of mobile robots will rise in production, in logistics, in intralogistics in general. So when the number of mobile robots raises, the fleets are getting bigger, and from my point of view, the fleets will also getting more heterogeneous. And if you have bigger and more heterogeneous fleets, of course, you need a good software solution to control them, to optimize it, to have an algorithms and optimization taking care of this aspect. So I think that's a very important factor. And another topic for the future, and also there a lot has changed in the last 5 years, is also how you are provisioning the software. And I think cloud and software as a service will get more and more important there, because there are many advantages using this technology. So for example, you can set up a new software instance easily. You can, of course, support and maintain the system easily, and you can bring more speed into rolling out software solutions and also automation solutions if you're using cloud technology. And I think that's also something where more and more people are making good experience. So I think that's also a big topic for the future, this cloud technology and using software as a service to get software solutions.
Is the cloud safe enough, for example, for automotive to rely on it?
Yeah, you know, that's also a very interesting topic, because sometimes you have on-premises solutions running on, very easy infrastructure and running, for example, on a PC somewhere, and then the whole factory is kind of reliant or is relying on this infrastructure. And of course, at the cloud infrastructure, you have, for example, high reliability. You have, when there's a problem with one system, another system gets up. So there are, of course, many mechanisms making it very safe and having a high reliability. Of course, you always have to look of data, where data is stored, what is done with the data. That's, of course, another important factor, but also there are initiatives taking care of this. And so I think if you are building up the right infrastructure, if you're having the right application, cloud can be very beneficial, and software as a service.
Is the cloud a better managed computer? No?
Yeah, so
some sort.
There are of course many aspects to consider, but if you're having, especially when you're having a big installation and you want to scale it, for example, scale it up, scale it down, you need high security, you need this reliability when something happens. So there, cloud technology and all those aspects connected to it can be very, very beneficial.
So thank you very much, Philipp, for coming to the show, and hope to see you back soon.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Nice to meet you.
Soon.
Thanks for listening to Intralogistics Insiders. Stay tuned for more insights and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite platform.